Merry meet, Annie here. Welcome back to the Flow of the Rite series. We've come to the place of having prepared our ritual site, our sacred space, and ourselves. And now we present ourselves at the edge of that sacred space that we've set aside when we constructed our temple. We are prepared in body and mind, stepping away from the mundane aspects of our life, both the happiness and the challenges which are part of that existence. And we have decided with great intent as we prepared ourselves, we are stepping away from and into something else, the return. Our mindset as we stand at the edge of the place we've set aside is one of peace, of disconnection. Remember I mentioned drift, a feeling of drifting away. It's not a sudden jerking away from the mundane into the ritual world. It is a sense of drift, release, a sense of inner peace, and, very importantly, a sense of looking forward to, anticipation of what is about to happen. Remember I told you that one of my personal habits is, after I've constructed the temple and reeved the space, I have a habit of laying my besom on the floor right before whatever door or entryway I used physically to get in and out of the room in which I'm going to be holding my ritual. I do that because after I am ready and I open the door to step back into my ritual space, I can for the moment perceive in front of me nothing more than the four walls of a room in the physical world. That feels odd to that drifty place I have set myself. The act of opening the door to the room and shutting it behind me for privacy's sake, stepping over the broom that I laid on the floor, reminding myself, getting me back in relation to, I prepared this temple. I cleaned this space at the spiritual level. It is no longer what's on the other side of that door. Stepping over my broom and into the space I have set aside as my temple. My choice then is to pick up my broom and lay it on the floor in front of my altar, letting my sacred space surround it and bring it into the other world we're about to enter. You may find that the simple act of opening and closing a door, stepping in and out of a physical portal, the door, is enough for you. But I wanted to share what I did with the broom because someone, probably 20 years ago or so, did this at a circle I was part of, and I really embraced it at the personal level for my solo rites. Our next step in the ritual, which we've arrived at, the ritual itself, is grounding and centering, which is part of the ritual. Don't think that it is something that leads to the ritual, an act you do and then enter ritual. That was, to my mind, the cleansing of body and emotions that were part of our personal purification. We're in the place of our circle now. We're in our sacred space. Yes, we have to raise the circle around us, but we are present in this other place now. Grounding and centering, to me, is part of the ritual, not a lead-in to the ritual. You've seen in your books and in your ventures throughout the cyber world all kinds of grounding and centering meditations, visualizations, act that you might do to ground and center you. But the truth is, a lot of us have problems with the calming down and easing of connection, the busyness, the monkey mind. I prefer to think of grounding and centering as calming and releasing. No matter that we have so diligently prepared ourselves to release the mundane, but here we are in sacred place. And in a way we sit with ourselves for the moment, sensing what is lingering about us, the cares, concerns, celebrations and joys of what is on the other side of that portal. Something may still be niggling at us, circling our head. We're in sacred space though now, so we can address that in a different way. If you are the kind of person who is able to calm and center and get to that zero place within you, that place of disconnection from thought, here's to you. I can't. I have to address any cares or concerns that are still flying around my head when I settle down in my sacred space. I have to address them rather directly. I acknowledge them. Some thought is buzzing in my head, something I've left behind. I thought I wanted to leave behind at least, and it followed me in. I sit quietly and notice where my mind goes. If it's not just sitting in a place of peace and anticipation of the right to come, that means something's in my mind. I let it come to my mind and then I acknowledge it. It's real, it exists. But I set it aside. The power of the psyche. I'm not going to get rid of that distraction. Whatever it was that I had concerns about on the other side of that portal, it's going to wait for me there. The power of acknowledging, hey, you're still with me, I don't want you here, is to say, I honor that. I will attend to you later, not now. Kind of having a conversation with anything that followed me into circle. I wanted to share that because meditation and the idea of I can om myself into a place of perfect calm, it doesn't work that way for all of us. Some, yes. Some, no. I am of an opinion we have those two different kinds of minds in circle. Those who can settle down, get to that quiet place by breathing or focus, and those who need to address forthrightly, yep, I acknowledge this is what's circling around up here, and goodbye. I will see you again on the other side of this circle. Taking stock of what am I feeling? How does my body feel? Am I tensed? Am I relaxed? How do I feel in the brain? Am I at a calm place? A place of anticipation? Noticing what is not. Any of that is a way to determine what might have followed you in that you need to address in some way. I suggest that the next thing you do is light your working candle. This is something that not only provides light to see by, but it is the candle from which you will light other candles. You have read, and I know many of you believe, that matches have no place in circle. So you use plastic, metal, butane, lighters that you click and light. I'm not going to judge what's right or wrong. I have to admit, I cannot stand any form of mechanical lighter in circle. I just can't do it. I don't welcome it. It's too much, in a way, technology to me. In my very first circles, matches were the evil flame stick. We were not allowed to light matches in circle. I think that's a leftover from when the smell of sulfur was connected to concepts of the underworld, the chthonic, the perhaps not healthy, if not evil influences. It goes back to the days of ceremonial magic, which were so tied into some Christian practices. I, even within my first circle, decided that matches were just fine. They were elemental beings, representing several elements actually. All four, in the way I look at them. Now that's another video. However, I use matches in my circle. Try it. If you have hung on to the words that you read or those that you hear that say no matches and instead you're clicking your Bic, try matches and see how it feels to you. Almost everyone that I have taught has taken up the use of matches as a way of holding the four elements in their hands, another way of acknowledging them. See what it feels like to you. I do suggest, though, that if you have to use a mechanical lighter, use it just to light your working candle. And then use a taper or a stick, something that you light the other candles from that, instead of lighting them with your lighter. You have lit your working candle. If you're going to use charcoal to burn your incense, light it now. I also am not a fan of lighting charcoal. This won't surprise you with mechanical lighters. I hold them over that working candle and light them that way. A little bit of advice for you. If you are someone who uses loose incense on charcoal, have a backup plan. I always keep a couple of appropriate sticks of stick or cone incense as part of my "and there shall be," it's listed there. And the reason is we've all had those moments when our charcoal is so dry, it burns up so fast, we're out of charcoal before we're out of ritual. And we've had those dag-nabbit damp charcoal bits that won't stay lit. Nothing more distracting than when you're going about the business of your ritual and you constantly have to relight a charcoal which keeps smothering itself out. So have backup incense. And don't worry about having to switch over to that. You just weren't meant to use your dry incense that night for some reason. So you had that intentional return to the space you've created in whatever way you set up is the closing of the door or the stepping over of something that puts you not there but here. You've quieted, you've relaxed and released anything that you still feel that's been circling your head. You've lit your working candle and you've lit your charcoal if you're using loose incense. Next is something that I know of as the clarion call. The clarion call is putting out to the universe, I'm opening myself up to your vibration. It's that vulnerability I mentioned when I said, what does naked in your rites mean, amongst many other things, possibly physically naked. One of the things it means is being totally open to whatever is about to occur and to whatever moves through your circle that is of the gods or the elements or the energies that you've opened yourself up to. I know some people that for the clarion call it's a certain piece of music. It's even a certain chant that they do personally that gets them to the place of feeling that vibrational connection to, and we'll get to that in the next video, the opening up to what is greater. The sense that this thing that you are doing is immense. I have a simple way of doing the clarion call. One ringing of my bell. A ringing of the bell that I experienced from that first heavy sound of it to the last fading away to it. I put myself in that vibration. I feel that bell. It's why not all bells work for all of us. We find one that works and one that doesn't. Have you ever wondered why a bell doesn't feel right to you? It might be that it's not getting you to the vibration you need to be. In other words, when you match it, it might make you feel nervous or too heavy according to the sound of the bell. And if you don't have a bell, you do have a bell. Something as simple as your chalice works wonderfully as a bell. A small crystal bowl of some kind can work very well. You need something that you can strike that will make a sound. So crystal, some metal, even some forms of pottery. So if you don't have a physical bell, try striking a bunch of different things that you might bring into your circle. Very often your chalice will work wonderfully. And about this striking, the clarion call doesn't work if you have a bell that you've kept the clapper on the inside and you go dingy 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 ding, or oh, that's just nothing but scattered energy, isn't it? The bell in circle. It's not something that you ring like a church bell. Usually we've taken the clappers out of the inside of our bells, if we're lucky enough to have an actual bell, and then we strike it. We might strike it with a hard object, sometimes a stone, or oftentimes I've seen people use the wooden rod that comes as part of a singing bowl. Clap that. Speaking of singing bowls, they make wonderful ways to do the clarion call if you have a singing bowl in your collection of items. For me, I hold up my bell that does not have a clapper inside and I hit it with the hilt of my athame. And that's how I get the sound that I resonate to out of my bell. And live with that sound from the bump of it starting, a little bit of a jolt feeling, to where it fades, 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 and follow that sound. In a way, you're following it inwardly to the place that your body recognizes the vibration, but you are also following it at an expansive level. You are at the same time going within and opening up. The clarion call. A call for vulnerability, for openness, for clarity. In the silence that follows that is the time I call taking up the mantle. This is purely symbolic, and we talked about the use of symbols when we talked early on about ritual. Taking up a particular shawl or a particular item of clothing, something which you lay over yourself. In a way, it's a laying on of a veil of your first steps into the mystery of the rite you're about to perform. something you drape yourself with to allow yourself to feel the settling in. In other words, in the clarion call, you've opened yourself up to this huge possibility, and then you've brought it down to what happens starting here within you. That's where you're going to experience the first power of your ritual. Interestingly, taking up the mantle can be disrobing. Some people will enter their sacred space with a particular article of clothing, a gown or robe that they wear. I know gentlemen who wear something as mundane as a towel around their waist or a sarong, something that they can easily drop. Taking up the mantle can be letting drop anything that you assumed as part of the physical world. You're now dropping it. So taking the mantle can be several different things. Actually laying something about you. I have a prayer shawl I always use in ritual at this point. It can be, if you would like to experience that way, a release of, a dropping of. In other words, as whatever you drop leaves your body, feel what comes over you next, that sense of quieting and centering. It should take you back to the place of the heart. Whatever you use as taking up the mantle should be something you repeat each time the same way. Again, we're creating a pattern that your unconscious recognizes. That when it's done this, it should feel like an exhale. And then you're living with whatever is at the bottom, the base, the relaxed point of that exhalation. So this has been the return. You came back in, some way of stepping into or over a portal that you have decided is the place at which what you do begins. You're grounded and centered, or as I call it, quieting and releasing. You lit your working candle, your charcoal, if you're using powdered incense. You struck the clarion call one time and went where it took you, and you took up the mantle. The next video we move on to opening up to what is greater. Until then, merry part, I wish you mirth and reverence.